Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, I am delving into an anime film that in Japan came out a couple months ago. In America came out a little over a week ago as I'm sitting down to actually record this. This, of course, is the latest part in the anime adaptation of the famous and popular manga Demon Slayer. And this, of course, is the first of 3 parts that will be adapting the last arc of the manga. This, of course, is Infinity Castle Part 1. Now, just a quick recap for those of you who haven't really watched the page that much, but I've talked about Demon Slayer a decent amount on this channel. It's been a while since I've talked about it, though. Back in 2020, during the COVID lockdown, I marathon watched the first season, did my review of that. And just for those of you wondering, it's probably one of the few times I've done a video essay review of an anime where I've actually watched the sub, but that's because before the dub came out. Then after the dub came out, I watched the season again and gave my little thoughts on the dub. When the Train movie came out, I did a review of that. I haven't really done reviews of the last couple seasons. I probably will when I sit down to rewatch the entire show in sequence again. I probably won't be for a while, though, but especially since for the last couple of years I haven't really had my writing muse as much when it comes to personal writing, work writing, yeah. Now, I have the entire manga up on the shelf right now. Excuse me while I move this. I kind of see, forgive me that it's behind a couple things, but you see it's the whole thing in the box there. And yet, I have not actually dedicated any time to sitting down and reading all that part of the manga. I know. Shame. Bad Mar. It's just, I just haven't sat down to it. Even the parts that I've already watched through the anime. Now, I've looked at a couple parts of it, which is why, for example, Inosuke's introduction, I think it looks creepier in the manga, but I mean, it's kind of a hard thing to transfer unless you did the shading right, but that's just like a nitpick level thing, not like super major. Now, I'll say I have read the ending part of the manga, because that I read when it came out, because that came out right about the time I was watching the anime. Now, with that in mind, that means I went into this movie mostly blind with what's going to happen. I knew some aspects of what's going to transpire, like some of the fights, the fate of a certain character, and a couple other moments, but most of it, I went in blind. And of course, like usual, I went and watched the dub version of it, which I'll say the cast did phenomenal like they always do. I'll say it was nice to see Johnny Young Bosch getting a little bit more to do with Giyu, other than like a handful of episodes from the show, but that was mainly the latter half of it. A couple of the characters, of course, only get a couple lines, but that's because they're mainly just background fluff in this movie, like Inosuke, a couple of the Hashira, but they show up later. Now, the one that I forgot was in this movie until after the fact, and then I went back and re-listened to the lines. I'm like, okay, I can hear it now. Was, of course, Channing Tatum. Apparently, in real life, his daughter is a fan of the show, and they somehow managed to snag him. And he voices the character of, I believe, sorry if I'm butchering this, Keizo, which is involved in one of the flashbacks for one of the demons. And just the way he managed to transform his voice for this role, he doesn't really put on a lot of voice. It's just like how he does the tones, how he does the cadence of his speaking to match the lip flaps, and everything. He really did do it. And of course, then I remembered, of course, he's done voice work in the past, but there's a difference in voice work to where you're trying to match pre-existing lip flaps than when you just sit in front of the mic and you're doing the lines basically fresh. And of course, you might get a couple different takes to do different versions of the line to see which one they're going to go with, but you got a little bit more creative freedom. So with that, I think he did a good job, and in the future, I actually wouldn't mind him doing a little bit more dub work. Hopefully they put him in roles that his type of voice actually fits, and not being just like, hey, let's get Channing Tatum in here, because like I said, for this one, he fit it. Like I said, if I forgot he was in here and wasn't like, wait a minute, I should tell you. Ow, the animation for this film, excellent. Again, Demon Slayer is not really one where I hear a lot of people saying the animation is mid. Or I hear people say the story and all that, but just a little side thing. I think just the whole thing of people always wanting to say that anime is mid just because it's popular is an take. It's like, yeah, it's not as good as you think. You might not like it as much as others, but to just randomly throw mid around, like, yeah, no. I don't really throw it around that much with anime. Films and stuff, yeah, like, remember when I saw Sucker Punch? But then again, that one was more like, was the name not a clue? Alright, the score, excellent as always. The film is a little long in the tooth. It's around 2.5 hours, so if you got bladder issues, or even if you don't drink a lot of water before you go in, because you will definitely have to run out, and it's one of those things like, do I really want to run out in the middle of this fight, or do I want to chance it and miss some good backstory, especially if you're going in blind like I did. Now, before I saw it, there were some of my fellow fans I noticed that were saying that there are pacing issues with this film. I didn't really find that many pacing issues with it. To me, it felt like it was paced pretty well, to where each third of the film is its own separate part of the film. Like the first part involves one fight, second part involves another fight, third part involves even another fight. And there's like inner stuff interspersed in between to kind of help a little bit. Now, like I said, having not read the manga, I don't know if it's paced that exact same way in the manga or for intercuts, but I would imagine in the manga it would pace it just the same, just so it doesn't seem like it's jarring that much. If that's an adaptation, the only thing I have to applaud them for that. And that's, if so, that's definitely something they probably set forth when they were like, okay, we're going to turn this into 3 films. Now, the plot. It picks up right where the last episode of the previous season did, where Muzan, he is being attacked. Tamayo's already sprung her thing. The Hashira are rushing him. And he's basically like, screw this, and pulls every Demon Slayer in the court. Not just the Hashira. Every one of them into his Infinity Castle. And now he's going to have his upper moons and any other demons in there who are equivalent to lower moons fight them, and essentially is a battle royal until sunrise. And basically Muzan's like, do you think you could all last till sunrise? And of course he's somewhere in the Infinity Castle still dealing with Tamayo, but they gotta find him, get past the demons. And at the same time, the castle is shifting constantly to mess with the Demon Slayers. And throughout this whole movie, we see a lot of the Demon Slayers fighting. We see the Hashira moving about, taking care of lower ranks. And we even see a lot of the, basically, trying to put this in a nice way. Because not all of them are unnamed. Some of them kind of have names and their faces and all that. But basically, all the Demon Slayers who are not of note, either not Hashira or not main characters, we actually get to see them take out some demons and show that they're not just all scrubs. But of course, they're not going to be taking out anyone of note, but still, seeing them actually do stuff was nice. The ones we see do the most in this film are, of course, the ones who are involved in the main fights in this. So in that case, it's going to be Tanjiro, Giyu, Zenitsu, Shinobu, trying to remember what the second fight. Yeah. Those ones. And the ones around their fight. And of course, the moons that they fight, which of course Zenitsu fights the new lowest ranked upper moon, who, as we find out, is basically his brother in breathing style, which explains his behavior during the training season. And we find out why. Let's just say it involves his teacher in Seppuku. Well, like I'm saying, even though I'm reviewing this, I'm trying to keep the spoilers of the story at a low, which this really shows, even though Zenitsu the first season or so was mainly used for comic relief, that when he locks in, like we've seen him when he gets serious, he locks the fuck in. And here, I can understand people not liking Zenitsu at first, but when it's something like this, I don't understand how people hate his character entirely. Maybe it was a certain cosplayer in the community that kind of helped a little bit with that in a negative way, which I'm not going to name him. He doesn't deserve the honor of me saying his name, other than with a certain George Lopezism following it. Tanjiro and Giyu, they take on Upper Moon 3, which is the one that killed Rengoku. So that fight was emotional, and that's the one that is actually in the third act of the film. I know it's a little weird to try to describe acts with this one. It's basically just one long episode and all that, but it's essentially the third act of the film, and they put the most emotional climax there, because going into His Blind, it's that part of the film that really hit me, because I did not know much about Akaza's backstory, and seeing it unfold, I'm like, I really feel for this guy. Especially with everything going on in the world right now involving the rich people, seeing his whole plight, I'm like, this really feels. And then, of course, seeing his whole backstory with the love of his life, his mentor who would have been his father-in-law, and then seeing them get killed, I don't mind a spoiler, and how he crashes out, it's like a justifiable crash out. And then seeing how he got turned, in fact he lost all his memories. This really hit me in the feels. For me, it was the most emotional part of the entire film. And that's one thing I really do love about Demon Slayer as a whole, is that even though you hate the demons when the Demon Slayers are fighting, and when they get killed and we find out their emotional backstory, it really does hit you there. Now, you know it's for the best that they're dead now, because, one, they're not going to be hurting anybody, and two, even though a lot of them are going to be sent straight to hell, at least they're now going to be at rest. So there is that. And of course, this one just continues that long thing of hitting in the feels. Not all of them, of course, are going to have that. I mean, even though Muzan does have like a minor sympathetic thing in his backstory, a lot of the stuff around it kind of basically cuts that out. Of course, the thing with Shinobu, we find out exactly what happened to her older sister. They talk about a little bit more about the fact that she cannot decapitate them, and seeing her poison usage pushed to the limit really added to the drama involving her fight with upper rank 2 Doma. And of course, Stephen Fu voicing Doma in the English dub, he really adds that smugness to it. And that's a very desperation fight. And then seeing her get taken out. This is one part I did not go into the story blind at. I knew she was going to, spoiler for those who haven't watched it, she was going to meet her end. And the emotional impact around it, like when the crows announce she's dead and everyone reacts. And then, of course, Kanao running in as Doma is finishing her off. Oh, yeah. And, of course, Kanao finally crashing out a bit. And, of course, that'll continue a bit into the next part, because we're going to get Doma's second fight, which is going to be not only with her, but also with Inosuke. And just a little heads up, that's one part of the story I'm also not going into blind. I know about Inosuke's whole little connection with Doma. That's one part that was kind of hard not to. Now, the fact that they put Doma and Shinobu's fight towards the beginning, and then they put the one with Akaza at the end, and they put Zenitsu's little thing in the center, that I think is kind of what helped with the pacing a bit. If you had put Zenitsu's at the end, that would have been a little bit of a disconnect. Now, like I said, I don't know if this is how it was paced in the manga well, or if this is how they decided to do it in the anime. But just looking at it from a film perspective, it definitely helps a bit more with the pacing for me. To have that emotional thing at the end once we've been on this roller coaster ride for over 2 hours. And it definitely helps with the end of the film, even though as the credits are rolling, they're starting their little segue into the next film, like with Muzan and his ranting. I haven't really brought it up, but the Master's heir, I really do like how he's taking hold of everything, making sure his sisters are staying locked in, everyone who's there at headquarters is staying locked in as the castle is shifting, only to find out it's larger than they thought, so they're like, oh crap. And I like the little story thing, is that he's doing this and holding everyone together at the age of 8. But then again, given the whole thing with their family, the curse and Muzan, it makes sense that they'd be locking in that early, so it was nice to see an 8-year-old do that, but it's also one of those things that they, as a group, are at war with another group, so they're going to have to grow up a little bit faster. It's kind of like how in Naruto, during times of war, the ninjas seem to grow up faster, which is why they rank up faster. I mean, there's a reason why Itachi was an Anbu Black Ops at such an young age, and Kakashi was a Jonin at a young age. stuff like that. That's about it, because not really much else to say about this without deep diving into deep spoilers, and that's not what a video like this is about. That type of video would probably be more like if I'm after I've read the manga all the way through and rewatch the movie once it hits Blu-ray, which that'll probably be a while before I get it, because I haven't gotten the last couple seasons on Blu-ray. I think the last Blu-ray I got was the Entertainment District, so I still got to get the last 2 ones on there, once I find them at a good, decent price. But if you are a fan of Demon Slayer or an anime fan in general and you haven't watched it, last I checked it's still in theaters, so go give it a watch. Whether you watch the sub or you watch the dub or you watch both just to see the difference, it definitely is a fun time. But like I said, it is a little long in the tooth, so mind your liquid consumption beforehand. And if you do have bladder issues, like I said, even without that, I'd say wait until it hits it, because then you can pause it and take breaks in between the long sections to go deal with that. But the only negative thing is that we gotta wait another freaking 2 years for the next part, man. But as a certain demon princess and a certain imp once said, animation takes time. Till next time, everybody.